Hello. Actually, bosh, bosh, bosh. There we go. Look at that. Okay. Where to begin today? We could look at the Champions League last night and two key incidents in the Champions League last night. We could look at Raheem Sterling kicking the pitch and falling over and getting a penalty. Or we could look at Jose Mourinho and his antics after the victory against Juventus in Turin, goading the crowd. Let's start with Raheem Sterling. He's in on goal. He's going to chip the ball, and he kicks his foot into the ground and trips himself up. And somehow the referee awards a penalty, even though there's no player near him to initiate contact. If this is not an argument for VAR, I do not know what is. VAR is a hot topic amongst the footballing world. We saw it at the World Cup. And there were some flaws with VAR. Of that, I will admit, there were some issues with VAR as a system and how we implement it going forward. It wasn't a perfect system. There were one or two games where it wasn't used effectively. There were some instances in games where the time taken to make a decision was confusing. And so this season, the Premier League and some other leagues have voted not to continue with VAR for this season. At least they will assess VAR next season after. Then we have, so that was just embarrassing. That's a call for VAR to be used. It didn't have an impact on the game. Man City were going to win the game anyway, but it is an embarrassing incident that I think UEFA would rather didn't happen. And the calls for VAR to be implemented by some will say, well, this is an argument for it because it would stop decisions like that being made. And we could debate the pros and cons of VAR all day long. There are some issues with it, and the system does need tinkering and fixing. And the best way to do that is to test it. But we'll leave that as is. The Mourinho antics, I think, are a bit more serious. And his press statement afterwards is just weird. Mourinho is doing a lot of this post whistle, getting involved in incidents. He's had several this season. He's had two in English football, and now he's had one in the Champions League. He's managed to get away with an FA charge for improper conduct with comments made after the final whistle against Newcastle, which he was saying something in Portuguese and making inflammatory comments at the end of that game, which got him hot water, but he's got away with not being charged for improper conduct or bringing the game into disrepute. There was the incident after the Chelsea game with the scuffle on the touchline, and now there's this. He raises his hand to his ear and goads the Juventus supporters. Let's begin with Mourinho. I don't know where to begin with Mourinho, to be honest. He seems to do a lot of this. There are some maverick managers and players out there who do divide opinion. Mourinho is starting to divide opinion in the footballing world more and more as each day goes by. I think totally avoidable as an incident. Does it bring the game into disrepute? Is he bringing the game into disrepute? Probably. It's not the first time he's caught with controversy like this. It will not be the last. He seems to do this a lot, and it divides opinion on him in the sport. Occasionally you see managers overstep the line with their celebrations or the passion, and I get that. Same with players. But he does this a lot, and that's the third serious incident this season involving Mourinho post the final whistle. So I don't know what UEFA and the FA do with him. He's managed to beat one charge. But he's been involved in three separate post-match incidents. So I don't know how many more he can have this season before he actually does get a touchline ban and a lengthy one. It's not a good image for the sport as well. It's really not a good image for the sport. It's interesting for us YouTubers because we have something to talk about with Mourinho. He is under a lot of pressure at Man United. That is no doubt. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him if UEFA decide to bring a charge of improper conduct. The FA have tried and have been defeated, and they're considering appealing that end of decision. So that's an interesting one. It ignites the debate about behaviours and what's acceptable and not acceptable, and it's not a good look for the game. Not a good look for the sport. A sport that's regularly criticised by many for a variety of issues. It doesn't look good if he's allowed to continue to have these kind of behaviours where at the final whistle, he does things like this or gets involved in incidents like this. It's not a good look. It's not a good image that the sport has. So we'll leave that open to debate and see what people think about it. I'll be waiting to see if UEFA charge him. I'll be very interested to see what UEFA do. I think there's a limited amount of time before they have to bring a charge against an individual or team for an instance. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if UEFA are revisiting the footage, and we'll see from there. Obviously, also UEFA in the headlines this week because of the allegations made by Der Spiegel. We mention this regularly at the moment. It's an interesting that financial fair play I think is a flawed system. It's clearly not fully enforced properly. There is a one rule fits one club, one rule fits another, and how it's implemented. That's a sticking point as well at the moment. Is financial fair play, and is it an appropriate system to have? I know what it's meant to do. It's meant to keep costs down, but I think a salary cap and taxing agents fees could also do that. So financial fair play is a flawed system, both by UEFA standards and then as you filter it down into the various domestic leagues as well. There are complete flaws in the system, and if the allegations against Man City and PSG are true, it highlights those flaws on the biggest scale. The fact that alleged Giovanni Infantino, the current FIFA president, who was working at UEFA at the time, if it's true that he's assisted in these clubs in bending the rules, it's another bad image for football. It's not a good look. It's not something I think football wants to have as an image. I think it's bad, and then the politics behind it is not great. On a ice hockey front, William Nylander still hasn't been signed by the Maple Leafs. They're running out of time. There is a rule, I think, an NHL rule, that if he isn't signed by, I think, the first week of December, he can't play for the rest of the season, which will ultimately devalue his trade value because he's not playing. And the contract negotiations are dragging on and on. Something has to happen quick there. So we'll see what happens. Also, we have Ubergate with the Ottawa Senators. That highlights the culture issue within the Senators organisation in Ottawa. It's been a toxic environment for a couple of years now. We saw with the Hoffman and Carlson incident, the protracted scandal around that, and the fact that both players ended up leaving the team. We've seen issues with a variety of things on and off the ice with the team. It's not a good look. It's really not a good look. It does raise a wide variety of issues in mind, but it's not a good look, and it's not a good look for the NHL or the team. And we'll have to see what kind of disciplinary action takes place. At the moment, I don't think Ottawa can afford to discipline all these players. What is noticeable, all these players are newer to the side and weren't at the side in 2016 when they got to the conference final. All these players are all newer additions to the squad and to the team and to the organisation. So clearly there are issues within the Ottawa Senators organisation, and that's a sticking point. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with some of these players. Duchesne's on obviously on a contract year. Is he going to be moved out? Probably. It seems to me that Ottawa's not a place where players want to go to play. They don't seem happy there. They seem divided. They see it's a toxic environment, and I'm not sure how much longer it can continue as is currently. Something has to give there. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. Obviously, Tommy Mason has won the Rugby League Golden Boot for his efforts this season. I think it's a fully deserved award. Obviously, looking at the injury he had in 2015 and then the follow-up injury in 2016, he's basically missed 2 years of rugby league out of the game. Had an average year last year, but this year has really deserved his place in the England side and has deserved his place winning the Golden Boot. He really has deserved it. Will the NRL come calling? Quite possibly. The NRL itself is an interesting kettle of fish. There's an argument that the NRL is the better league over Super League, and there's the argument that the quality level's higher, and the skill level's higher, and the physicality and the fitness levels, and a variety of other things. And yes, the NRL does have a bit more money, and the NRL does have, I think, a wider fan base in Australia than the Super League does in England. There are debates over whether we should, the Super League should expand in the south of England or the south of the UK and look at supporting the Welsh game more, and regionally in England, in the south of England, support teams in the south of England more and expand the game. But Mason is a bright spark in this debate. That hat trick against New Zealand and the defensive effort he put in as well. His defensive capabilities get underappreciated by fans and by some because he's seen as a winger, he's seen as a finisher. But no, for a smaller man, he's got a very good defensive tackle technique. He's very good in defence. He's very well. He's good at reading the game. He reads the game exceptionally well. So it's interesting. Tommy Mason winning this award. There'll be those who say, "Well, why is a Super League player won it when the NRL is the better league?" And they are fully justified in arguing that point. I think his backstory with the injuries he's had, I think, is one of the reasons why he's won the award. But his performances for England in the 2 tests against New Zealand also back up, the fact he's one of the better players right now in the English game. And I can see the NRL, him ending up in the NRL at some point, giving the NRL a go for a couple of seasons. I really can see the NRL being interested in signing him. So we'll have to see if an NRL team will be interested in getting him to play for them at some point. That's something that we have to look at and consider. He's definitely, I think, NRL standard for his skill level. I think his size possibly counts against him, but that's not to say that he wouldn't do well in the NRL and be successful in the NRL. And it's open to debate on that one. Talking about the NRL, Jared Haynen, where's he going to end up? Obviously, Parramatta have decided not to re-sign him. It hasn't worked out how I think he would have wanted it to work out in the end. Honestly, I think the Gold Coast Titans episode doesn't sit well with many. He didn't really perform there. The Titans were glad to be rid of him, destabilise the dressing room. Goes to Parramatta. He doesn't look fully fit in pre-season warm-up. He doesn't look on the pace. He's ended up out of contract and without a team. So where does he end up? That's going to be a very, very interesting talking point until the season starts. Does he go to the Super League? Does he look at possibly switching codes to rugby league? He's tried the NFL and that didn't really work out at the San Francisco 49ers. So where does he end up? That's a very, very crucial thing. What team would be willing to sign him and would he fit into the current squads that are there now? We could also discuss with the NRL the influx of English players to the NRL over the last decade. There's been a lot, and there's more coming. It's a big debating point, the amount of English players going to the NRL. I do honestly believe the NRL is better than Super League by a distance. Although the performances of England against New Zealand are showing that gap possibly is closing. But if we look at the World Club Challenge games and the games between the English clubs, Super League clubs, and the NRL clubs back before Easter, and the very one-sided nature of those results, where the English clubs lost all 3 games, we're going to see what happens. Obviously, in this year's World Club Challenge, next year's World Club Challenge, and if there can be some revenge there, but the gap is there. The NRL consistently is better year on year. I think that's why the best English players are going over there to play, and some of them have played their entire careers there in the Burgess Twins. So that says something. There's a lot of English players are going over to the NRL to try their hand. Some to finish their careers out, others to play the majority of their careers there, like the Burgess brothers. I can see more English players going to the NRL over the next couple of years. It's surprising that most of our international forward pack play in the NRL. That's where it really gets us, is the big physical players are playing over there. But now wingers and back 3 players are going over there as well. So it's interesting that debate is the Super League NRL debate. The fact that more and more English players are going every year says something. Obviously not all of them have performed well. We can look at Zach Hardaker as a failure, but we can look at the Burgess brothers and James Graham as being successes. We could look at Whitehead being a success, Josh Hodgson being a success, and more are now willing to take that leap of faith and go to the Southern Hemisphere to play. And has it benefited the England national side? Probably. Does it benefit Super League? No, because the best talent is seeing another league is a better league to play. So that's where we stand with that. And I can see at some point the NRL expanding to 18 teams, which means there'll be more playing space for players, more roster spaces. I can definitely see more English players going over to play in Australia in the next 2 to 5 years. I wouldn't say it's an exodus of English players. I'd say it's just the best English players playing in Australia. And there are some English players in the Super League that I think would suit the NRL, like Jermaine McGilvery. Absolutely could play in the NRL. So that's open for debate. It'll be interesting to see how New Zealand respond in this third test, because I did say last year that the gap between NRL and Super League was bigger than people realise, with a lot of the Super League based players really struggling. But we'll see. We'll have to see on that. Now, if we look at close to home, some of the issues that are befalling English sport. Yes, so look at some of the issues that are befalling English sport. There are a few things going on right now in domestic sport here in the UK. We are aware that there is an investigation into clubs, players, agents, and managers in a tax fraud investigation. We are aware that there is a club or clubs under investigation for corruption in English football. So that's something to be aware of. Obviously, we've had the collapse of the Wembley deal, which has ceased to be a talking point at the moment. But looking at the state of the Wembley pitch, it ain't great. So as a multi-use stadium, the playing surface is just not good enough. So whether it would have benefited grassroots football in this country is open for debate. There's corruption allegations around that as well. Rugby union, we've got England versus the All Blacks. It's going to be an interesting game, but guess what? It's not free-to-air TV, so less people go to watch it. It's on subscription TV, and that's a debating point over the TV rights to sports and TV packages and TV deals. More and more people want to stream online or watch it free-to-air. It's a thing. People aren't happy with all these subscription TV channels or pay-per-view channels where you have to access sport. They want to see it more free-to-air, more easily accessible, and I can see that being an ongoing trend. British ice hockey, the Invincible Dynamos, as I said, they crowdfunded and they've reached their funding target to keep functioning, but they've had more players leave. Both import players have left now, so they've got to try and sign replacement players for these players, or they have a very limited squad size, and it's going to make it more difficult for them to be competitive in the league they're at, to be successful in getting wins, because they're winless right now. The Basin State Bison, we will find out in 6 days what the future holds. There are more meetings to take place to do with the future of the team and the building they play in, and moving forward with that. It's been a very, very unfortunate mess that has happened down in Hampshire in the UK. Very, very unfortunate mess. Easily avoidable. Had proper rink maintenance taken place over the years. Very easily avoidable. Obviously, what's happened there is showing a lack of governance in the sport. And that's something that keeps coming up is sports governance and accountability, and regularly comes up governance of sport. British ice hockey has an issue with the funding side and the structures. There is no doubt. English football's come under criticism again. Possible restructuring of the FA necessary, and the Scottish FA as well. We look at rugby union. They're trying to bring in rules to reduce the amount of games players play, but they want to increase the length of season. That's an issue. There's also changes to some of the rugby union laws of the tackle area, and they're making too many changes at the same time rather than the changes to bed in. That's an issue. So there's debate on rulings within the game and governance as well. Rugby league, the way they dealt with selecting stadiums for the internationals is a debating point. A lot of empty seats the first two games. They're saying Headingley's a sellout. The KC Stadium in Hull wasn't fully filled, which was surprising. Atmosphere was poor. Anfield, wrong choice of stadium. Good pitch, Mike, but wrong choice of stadium for a rugby league international. Outside of a World Cup, I don't think that works at all well. And again, finances within rugby league in the UK, there's not as much money in it as people realise. The TV deal with Sky and BBC for the Challenge Cup and Super League needs addressing. Definitely needs looking at. There's a concern that not all the money's filtering down to the lower levels of the game. So again, governance and money is a big talking point to do with rugby league. If we look at other sports, obviously F1 has decided to Liberty Media take F1 to Vietnam from 2020. That's an interesting talking point. And it hasn't gone down well with some. It's not necessarily the worst choice they've made for a location for a Grand Prix, I will say that. But is it necessarily the right location? Time will tell. It's going to be a street circuit. That's again created some disquiet within certain levels of the media and fan base, and there's a variety of not necessarily it's not necessarily sitting well necessarily with all the fans of F1 or motorsport. Street circuits come under a lot of criticism regularly. Where is that? Let me chat. So again, the Liberty Media are trying to make so many changes to the sport. They're trying to change the regulations. They're trying to change the makeup of the sport. This is the first new location they have chosen for a Grand Prix since they've taken over the running of F1. Their ownership of F1 has not gone smoothly. There are those within the sport that don't want these changes to take place, like Ferrari and Mercedes, the bigger teams, the bigger manufacturers. They're not necessarily on board with all the changes that are being proposed. So F1's got to be careful, and Liberty Media have to be careful with the direction the sport takes. They are at a crossroads. The TV deal has been criticised. There's a variety of things being criticised there to do with choosing Vietnam as a new location, and trying to grow the sport in Southeast Asia. It's not really known as a motorsport market is Vietnam, so it's an interesting choice of location. I understand why they're doing it. Vietnam is a rapidly growing economy, and there's more and more money in the region. At the same time, there are those that are against it for a variety of reasons. And again, their voice has to be heard and considered when decisions like this are made. But we are seeing a change in direction by a lot of sports. They're going, obviously, for money from Asia to invest in the sport over in Europe. We're seeing a trend here. We've also seen Wigan Athletic being sold by the Whelan family, again to a Southeast Asian company, for only 22 million, which is really surprising how little the club went for at sale. They're currently 16th in the championship, and they might have won League One, but the second place team Blackburn are far higher in the table, making a better fist of life in the championship. I honestly think Wigan want to get back to the Premier League. I think that's the ultimate goal. They were there for a good period of time. The Whelan family have owned the club since the mid-90s, and they are in a far better place now than what they were when the club was purchased. Again, as things stand, another foreign-owned club in English football, is it's a debating point. It is a debating point. These kind of this gets brought up a lot. Is it the right kind of place to go? I don't know. If we're looking at at foreign ownership of clubs. It's very, very interesting. There's a lot of them. We've seen obviously the money in football. A lot of money in football now is international. It's an international game, so it's very, very interesting to see. The fact that another club is owned by foreign ownership. So it's interesting. So yeah, so if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask them. We could discuss a variety of things, really. I mean, covering all bases here. Obviously, the NFL have agreed a partnership with Epic Games, which are the makers of Fortnite, and that's interesting in itself. The way that they've decided to put their brand in a computer game that isn't a Madden series is really, really interesting. It's really, really good fun. It's a great marketing ploy. No, it's a brilliant marketing ploy by the team, by the NFL, sorry. And it's interesting the direction that the NFL has decided to take with this. They've obviously decided it's a marketing opportunity, and I honestly think it's a very, 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 very shrewd move by the head of marketing in the NFL marketing department. They've really done their homework. They've worked out that there is a young fan base out there. They do enjoy video games, and very, very well done. I think what they've done there is they've done their own work. They've worked out that one second. And yeah, I think I do think it is very, very interesting that they've taken this step first. And what does that mean long term? I can see more teams, individual sportsmen doing it, selling their rights to video games companies to put them in non-sports video games. I can see that happening more and more often. It's a good money-making revenue stream as well, with player wages going up and up each year, with the salary cap going up. It's another way to make revenue streams. Hopefully, you can keep ticket prices stable without them having to go up too much. It's a good way to make money for the NFL to be distributed amongst the teams evenly, because obviously their individual team brands are going to be on there with their logos as well. Be interesting to see which is the most popular team in the NFL with the biggest fan base, because we'll see that from downloads of the NFL stuff on Fortnite. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. That'd be very, very interesting to see what happens financially, and how much money the NFL make out of it, and how much each individual team makes out of this Fortnite deal that they've signed with Epic Games. It's going to be really interesting to get an idea of how much of a marketing success this actually is. And depending on how the NFL does, depends on what next leagues get involved to get on that gravy train of making money through linking up with the video game side of things. In the cricket, England are in a very, very dominant position against Sri Lanka, and they look on course to win the first test. Obviously, it's obviously the first test post Alistair Cook's retirement. Not really getting the coverage it should get over here, because again, TV rights. It's not on free-to-air TV. It's not easily accessible. It's on pay-per-view TV only. That's a big hot topic in cricketing circles at the moment, from fans and experts in the sport. So again, that's an interesting debating point, and we shall see what actually happens there. There's a lot going on within cricket now, with these corruption allegations and other things going on within the sport. So we shall see what happens to do with cricket as a whole. The Test series, I am surprised. Again, England's top order are regularly struggling minds. So something needs to happen with England's top order. They have sort of bounced back in this second innings somewhat. The first innings was a bit of a struggle. So it's going to be interesting to see, what they do going forward, and if they dominate the series or if it's a closer series than people realise. Hey, how you doing, bud? It's been a while. Good to see you. What do you want to talk about? It's good to see. I'm doing reasonably okay. I've had a few issues with my left shoulder and neck, and I've got a physio. It's a recurring old injury that I've aggravated somehow. That's more serious than we first realised. So that's a bit of a bummer. But I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm still producing content, still making videos. I'm still here. I'm still enjoying having a channel. But it's good to see you on a chat. I haven't seen you for a while. Be interested to see what you want to discuss today. I've covered a lot in the last half hour with no questions being asked, so it's good to have a question at last. I've just basically been talking for half an hour and droning on, and checking bits and pieces. But no, overall, I'm doing all right. Yeah, I've already mentioned that. So if you want to rewatch the live stream from the beginning at the end, and it all processes, I have discussed Mourinho, and I think Mourinho keeps doing this, and this is something that he needs to avoid doing. It's the third incident this season with Mourinho, and he's got a history of this in Spain, in Italy, in Portugal, here in England. He's got a history of these antics, so it's nothing new. How he got away with that FA charge for bringing the game in disrepute for the comments he made after the Newcastle game, I don't know. Mourinho, we'll have to see if UEFA charge him with anything, and we'll have to wait. They have a limited amount of time before they can charge, so that's going to be interesting to see what UEFA do, and we'll have to go from there. It's not a good look, though. Not a good look, and it's Mourinho again causing problems. So I don't know how long Man United can continue like this without having to work with it. The Man City PSG, I've done a video on it, so it's on the playlist, but I'll give my thoughts. It again doesn't look good. Financial fair play has been a divisive topic since it was brought in by UEFA a couple of years ago. It's regularly breached. Very few clubs are actually fully punished under the rulings. They're allowed to worm their way out. If the allegations are true, and Der Spiegel is a very well-respected news outlet in Germany, they're very, very good. They're normally one of the few news outlets that actually do print the truth. They're very, very good at uncovering these things. Their undercover journalism being of a top order. If they are true, it's a stain on the game. It's showing the pure greed of the game has got out of control. And I don't know. I don't know with that one. I've done a video on it. They are in the hot water. Obviously, these are the worst kept secrets. We knew that they were already in breach of financial fair play years ago. But if the UEFA and Infantino, especially when he was at UEFA, help cover it up or help them avoid punishment, it's not a good look. It's not a good look by a long way. Yeah, the Lennon abuse that he received, but it's their reactions as well. Football itself needs to. For some reason, football has this issue with fans misbehaving a lot, and then managers and players misbehaving a lot. It's not a good look for the sport. It's not a good image for the sport. It's difficult. I'm not 100% certain what football can do, but it's also a social thing. I don't know why football fans seem to have a really bad reputation for abusing officials and players and coaches. We see it a lot less in other sports, but there are issues in other sports as well to do with this, but it seems to be most prevalent in football. So I think Mourinho and Lennon both have a history of reacting or overreacting on the touchline when their teams win in crucial games. They do have a history of it, but you're going to get this in every sport. But these two have a track record of controversial actions, bust-ups on the touchline, fines by their various leagues they coach in, UEFA charges. I don't know. I don't know what happens, but I think UEFA will definitely look at this. They have a limited time frame in which to look at it, though. What do I think of the England Rugby Union team against New Zealand at Twickenham? No to Alagi. England, If this was two years ago, they were the best team in Europe. Now they're not. I don't think Tuilagi not being in the side is going to be a difference maker. It's down to the fact that New Zealand are seriously a better team. Um, I don't know what's going to be the results going to be. It's on Sky. I don't have Sky. Plus, I'm going out Saturday to watch ice hockey at my local ice rink with my local team playing. So I'm going to miss the Ireland game as well. Um, I don't know. I think England are well off the pace. I think there's a lot of issues with England's setup. The whole Cipriani kind of, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? That debate is rumbling on. That's got to be a distraction. There is a lot of injuries. England, for some reason, England have more injuries than most Test sides, and that comes down to the coaching methods, the training methods. Are the players been overworked? I know the Premiership is bringing in rules to reduce the amount of games players can play in a calendar year, both club and Test level. It is going to be a long day. It is going to be a long day for England. Ireland for me are the only European team that can regularly challenge the All Blacks at the moment. If we look at things, they're the only team regularly that can give the All Blacks a close game. If they lose or win or draw, it's irrelevant. I think Ireland are streets ahead of the rest of Europe in player development, in tactics, in coaching. They're better off than England by a long way. England have really fallen flat the last 18 months, and a lot of that is to do with selection of players and discipline. And the squad discipline on the field, when you're looking at the amount of penalties England give away, they're giving away far too much. At the breakdown, they have been exposed in the Six Nations. South Africa won that summer series 2-1. Yes, they lost last weekend, but because it was outside the official test window, and that's the big debate point, is the test window. They couldn't field a full team. If that was a full-strength South Africa side, with the available England players, and I think that was basically the best England side they could put out. That's a different result, nine times out of 10. And South Africa are sort of in a transition period right at the moment, and they are improving again. South Africa went through a really bad patch the last couple of years, and because two of their sides now don't play in the Super Rugby, they play in the Pro League. There's a sort of transition period for South Africa. But if that was a full strength South Africa side against a full strength England side with what is available right now, South Africa win. Ireland, I think, are the only side that can, in the Northern Hemisphere at least, that can, on a one-off game, World Cup aside, beat New Zealand right now. New Zealand are beatable. Argentina, Australia, and South Africa have exposed New Zealand in the Rugby Championship in the Southern Hemisphere. They're not as invincible as people think, but I think overall, if you go do a 3-test series or a one-off test, Ireland are the only side that I think are capable of beating New Zealand. They proved they can do it. Obviously, yes, it was in Chicago, and it was one of those tests they take to the North America for some reason. I don't understand that. But I do think I think Ireland are the best placed European team for challenging the All Blacks. When the World Cup comes around next year, that's a different kettle of fish because that's tournament rugby and a lot of things can happen because it's a tournament. But for a one-off test match, yeah, I think England are going to lose this weekend. I don't know by how much. I honestly don't know by how much. But it could be a hiding to nothing, or it could be a close game. But I don't think England are going to win. If they are to win, a lot of things have to go in their favour. The weather has to be atrocious, for example, to nullify New Zealand's passing game. The scrum has to step up. The scrum, I think, is where England's pack is where there's not a lot of experience at test level. So that's going to be a big test for those players that play in the scrum. So we'll see. But I think New Zealand are hot favourites to win that game by, I would say, 15 or 20 points with where England are at right now on and off the field. Wow, yeah, I would say the BT Sport TV rights. We can discuss BT Sport not being the best sports channel in the world. I think I used to love watching the Champions League on a Tuesday and Wednesday night on ITV. I used to like watching the Europa League on ITV4. They got good viewing numbers when they were on free-to-air TV. BT's numbers for viewership are really low. But I'm glad you enjoyed what you've seen this week. That's the important thing. Is if you can access the sport and you do enjoy it, it's great. But the fact you've got to pay so much for it is what's wrong with sport right now. Is the distribution of wealth and revenue streams and TV deals, and it's a big talking point, and we discuss it a lot. The England Rugby Test, yeah, I've covered the Rugby League series so far. I've watched both games in full. I'll be able to watch the game on Sunday because I'm not doing anything, so I can cover all three games. I've done a preview for this Test match. I've obviously done reviews for the last two Test matches. The crowd attendances, yes. I was concerned with the fact that they couldn't fill the stadium in Hull, considering Hull have two professional rugby league teams and is a rugby league city first and foremost. Football and ice hockey come second in Hull. Rugby league is the main sport in the city. The fact they couldn't fill that stadium was a concern, and the fact they didn't even bother selling tickets for the top tier at the KC was a concern. The atmosphere was shocking. Now, I understand the weather wasn't great. It was very, very cold. There were chances of snow. I get that, but it was I wouldn't say it was the wrong choice for stadium. They could have marketed a lot better. They could have done it a lot better. They didn't market it as well as they could have. So ticket price has got to be a concern. Advertising for tickets has got to be a concern. The choice of Anfield, I was really confused by, and a lot of subscribers who've been on live streaming and have commented on videos have questioned the Anfield choice, and the fact they didn't even bother trying to sell tickets for the top tiers of the main stands, and the fact they couldn't fill the Kop, and there was a lot of empty seats. I will admit this: the Merseysiders, the Scousers, gave a really good atmosphere, and it was a good game. It really was a good game, and I'm really surprised, that they chose Anfield. As you have got Wigan, Warrington, Castleford, a variety of stadiums of rugby league grounds that you could have chosen. The Lee Sports Village. Okay, it's not the biggest stadium, but it's a very modern stadium. It's got a great playing surface. Widnes got an all-weather surface. It's a plastic pitch, so the weather won't affect it. I am really surprised they chose Anfield, because rugby league in Liverpool hasn't worked. We can look in the history of the two rugby league teams that used to play in Liverpool. One's moved, and the other one went out of business. So I don't really see that. Rafael Nadal did win the French Open, which is Roland Garros, but he's not number one. He's not playing the ATP Tour Finals at the end of the year, which means Djokovic will be number one again. Nadal is going to have surgery I don't know what he's having surgery on, but he's having surgery on an injury, and he's not going to be playing the ATP Tour Finals at the end of the year, so he won't finish the year number one. He did win the French Open. He's also won a few other tournaments on the tour circuit. So it's also about the amount of games won as well. Even if he doesn't win overall tournaments, it's about the amount of games played and won. I think the back to the rugby league though. The first game I think New Zealand should have won that. They were the better side. England got lucky, and goal kicking was crucial in that game. Very, very lucky in the first test. The first test wasn't as good quality as the second test. The second test, I would say, in New Zealand were cruising at 54 minutes. Then there's a late hit, and I will talk about the dirty play from both sides. The first test was a grinding test. The conditions didn't really suit flowing rugby of either kind. If you were to play rugby union on that day, on that pitch, you would have had a similar, very tight, cagey, sloppy result. You could see that discipline wasn't there. Skill set fell apart. Lots of knock-ons, lots of penalties. Very stop-start game. The second test, which I did enjoy watching, I did, and you can look at my match reviews on both, because the key point in the second test was that late hit on Sam Tompkins that led to the brawl. Let's call it a brawl, because whether punches were thrown or not, no one's picked that up. No one was put on report, and this is what gets me about the dirty play. So the result. England scored 14 unanswered second half points, and New Zealand fell apart after 54 minutes for whatever reason, and we could discuss, their right hand side defence, Rapana's injury, which was a serious one. There was a lot of going on in that game, but the discipline side, there was a couple of late hits by New Zealanders, and there was George Burgess' eye gouge. Now, George Burgess wasn't put on report. Neither were the two Kiwi players. I think Waria Hargreaves was one who put a late shot in the first half. There was another player who put a late shot in the second half, which led to the coming together of players. No player was put on report by the referee. Not a single player was, even though there were replays showing that there were two seriously late hits, or marginal late hits at least, and an eye gouge. Supplementary disciplines come in. They've reviewed the footage of the incidents, or probably someone's rewatched the whole game and has highlighted the incidents. George Burgess gets banned for 4 games. The two Kiwi players, nothing given. There was a couple other bits and pieces in that game as well. But New Zealand fell apart after that and completely lost focus and lost direction. Completely. I'm not surprised by the dirty play. The New Zealanders are used to the NRL 2-ref system, 1-ref system in International Rugby League, so they can get away with a lot more. And the New Zealanders would have gone, right, okay, we've only got the 1 ref. We can get a lot, It's not that the NRL is more physical. The English game is just as physical. It's just a different style. There's more running of the ball from the back three because it's a different style of play. There's more sleight of foot in the English game. I wouldn't say that the NRL is necessarily more physical. I would say it's the 2-ref system. In the NRL, there's a 2-referee system. So George Burgess would be put on report straight away for an eye gouge or sin binned and put on report. Those 2 late hits, you've got that second pair of eyes watching. Again, possible further discipline given, supplementary, put on report, penalty, whatever. I think the Kiwis and the English players both worked out. There's only 1 ref here, and a lot of the English players play in the NRL. You would have 1 ref watching the tackle area and 1 ref keeping the defending team on side where the referee stands. That's the offside line. That's how the 2-ref system works. There would be an official directly by that tackle area looking and saying release, play the ball, all that kind of stuff. Watch the neck, watch the head. The players, I think 3/4 of the players play in the NRL. There are some other English players who have played in the NRL that are currently in and around the squad that now play in Super League. They know what they can get away with. Wayne Bennett coaches in the NRL. Was coaching with the Brisbane Broncos. He's now moving on, but Wayne Bennett is an NRL coach. He will tell his players what they can get away with the 1-ref system. Super League players will know what they can get away with the 1-ref system, and some of these Kiwi players have played in the Super League, so they will know what they can get away with just the 1 referee. The fact it was picked up on TV though, and then replays were shown of all the incidents, makes that referee, who is an NRL ref, look really, really poor by not, putting on report. At my C something, I've done lots of the sea missions. I've got achievements for sinking epic ships when I was at a lower level. I haven't played for a couple of weeks because I bought Red Dead, and I haven't played Red Dead every day. I think if I game too much all the time, I'll lose focus on this and other bits and pieces that I have to do. I haven't played Assassin's Creed for a couple of weeks. I needed a break from it. I played it every day from release till Red Dead Redemption came out, so I need a little break. I will go back to it. Interestingly, we're getting another video game comment in the question section. It's really nice to see. I do like the fact you can use the ships. You can use that to travel, and it's great fun sailing around because you get to explore a lot more of the map. I've still got more of the map to explore and more missions to do. There are still things left undone on Assassin's Creed that I have to go back and finish, which will be helpful to defeating the final boss, which is a pain in the arse. There are still a few story arcs left for me to do. There's that. So, getting back to sport, thank you for distracting me, Mr. Hanson. I'm watching you. You do this a lot with these video game questions on sports streams. I'm watching you. If we go back and look at the second test, Anfield was the wrong stadium. Now, from all reports, we understand that Headingley and Leeds is sold out. Fingers crossed. But how much of the stadium is actually open for this test match? That's another question. Plus, the Headingley pitch isn't as good as the 2 previous pitches. It cuts up a lot more. With the weather we're going to have, it's going to be a real test match of endurance, I think, and fitness levels. I think the Kiwis, I predicted them to win the second test, and they didn't. But I do think New Zealand will have a point to prove. They're going to be fired up. Now they now know that England have Darryl Clark injured and out, and George Burgess suspended. So they are going to target that pack. They are going to target up the middle to make the space for Sean Johnson. They are going to target the England pack because it's now missing 2 players. And that's going to challenge the depth and Wayne Bennett's rotation of players. Obviously, England want to win the series 3-0. They want to whitewash New Zealand. New Zealand don't want to leave with nothing. So it is interesting. And no need to apologise, but you're very, very good at distracting me from sports conversations, Mr. Hanson. I'm watching you. But no, I do enjoy talking about the video game side of things. I've done my review on Assassin's Creed when I first got it, and when I initially got into the game. Now I've basically completed the main story arc. I've got a few bits and pieces to finish off. It's a fun game. The map is really well done. The landscape is really well done, and it brings me back to esports because the NFL has obviously signed this agreement with Epic Games to have NFL kits in Fortnite. So it'll be interesting to see how much money the NFL makes off that. But no, the rugby league, it's that heading me. The pitch isn't as good as Anfield or Hull. It cuts up a lot more. Bearing in mind the rugby union team, the Yorkshire Carnegie, formerly Leeds rugby union side, they also play their regular games there as well, and the rugby union season's in full swing. So that's going to be interesting how the pitch holds up. On the Super Bowl side of things, the Rams look good, don't they? I've been catching the odd NFL game online where I can. The Rams look good. The Kansas City Chiefs look good. The Chiefs and the Rams, I think, are the 2 best teams in the NFL right now. Whether they, get to the postseason, go far in the postseason, that's open for the second. We're entering the second half of the season now, so that'll be interesting to see how far they go into the postseason. They're going to make it to the playoffs. Playoff football is different to regular season. Same with ice hockey. Same with baseball. When you get to postseason, it's a kettle of fish. The Buffalo Bills, they got back to the playoffs the first time in a decade. They haven't really been a playoff side for quite some time. Their regular season form is just too indifferent. But they are sort of. We got another guy. We got a couple more ones here, and we're going to get rid of him. And I bet you do. Well, it all depends on availability of people to meet up. I'm always down my local ice rink watching games. It all depends on where people live really, and availability for meetups and organising it really. It's something. Okay, you're talking about drugs, so you can go away. Yeah, right. We've had a couple of idiots now. I'm happy to do meetups, but sort of don't bring drugs kind of thing. And kind of obvious on that one. Do I play any games? Like what kind of games? Because we're talking about video games or actual. I've seen that Stephen Ahmed before. He's just changed his name. There's a few of them. God, we've got some morons today, haven't we? I thought they were nice and well. Right, where were we? Buffalo Bills. Yeah, the Bills. Their regular season form isn't good enough. Consistently, they've been an average regular season side for too long. Some seasons they're really bad. Last season they were decent. They got to the playoffs, so there is hope that they can have a 500 record, get to the playoffs, and do something. It's for some reason it's Buffalo as a city. They underperform as a sports city. The teams that are based in Buffalo regularly underperform. Yeah, the Saints always. You can go away. Fuck, so stop changing your name, man. You're just a pain in the arse. The Bills, Patriots, Patriots have been a solid franchise for 20 years. Long term, they've had their period of success, I believe. They've just had a period of success. Whether they can continue that period of success after Brady retires and with some new players coming in is another thing. There's it's more to do with, I think, getting players in, and when they do stop winning, how quickly they take to rebuild. Right. Usain Bolt, would he play in the NFL? He'd be a wide receiver. He would be a wide receiver or running back because his pace and his height. Plain and simple. He will either be a running back or a wide receiver. Yeah, no, he's not playing football in Australia anymore. The Gold Coast Mariners released him from his trial. We didn't get a contract signed. But bearing in mind, you've got to look at his age. You've got to look at Usain Bolt's age and the fact that he's put a lot on his body with his athletic career. He started to get some niggling injuries towards the end of his athletic career as well, with muscle issues and tendon issues. He's made no secret of his joy of football, and he's trained with Borussia Dortmund a couple of years ago in the off season. Obviously, the Mariners gave him a trial, and at the end of it, I think they made the right decision because his first touch is absolutely appalling. He's got the first touch of a club. He really does have the first touch of a goat, and not the goat greatest of all time. He really has a poor first touch. His technical ability, he's got the pace to scare defenders, but his positional ability is not great. His heading ability is poor. His technical ability is not up to, I would say, semi-pro standard. He turned out a contract in Europe, a lower European league. He stayed with the Mariners, but I think the right decision was made. Football is one of those sports very similar to rugby, where you've got to learn your skills young and work your way up. And he's obviously played at amateur level. He's played these charity matches, but he hasn't had to train football wise year in, year out. No, the Australian A League is growing and is growing well, and they are producing a lot of young Australian players that end up playing in Europe. Obviously, the A League is nowhere near the standard of the European leagues, and that's no doubt. But the issue with the A League is, and the positive side of it, is a lot of European immigrants have come over to Australia from Balkans, the UK, Ireland, Italy. There's a big Mediterranean minority in Australia. There's obviously Anglo-Irish. But Usain Bolt, if he was to go for the NFL, physically, like his upper body, he's going to get hit a lot. And obviously, he's not used to playing that kind of physical sport because Jamaica, there's two choices. You play cricket, athletics, and possibly football. So they're not really into those big, strong contact sports. But he would be a wide receiver or running back. It's whether he could physically stand up being flattened by a 20-stone linebacker daily. Because we've now seen him starting to struggle with his calf muscles and his thigh muscles and various other bits and pieces. His body's starting to wear down. He's in his 30s now. So very much like Jared Hayne going to the NFL a couple of years ago. It didn't work out for Jared Hayne, again, because he hasn't played American football before. He said he always wanted to, but he's never actually played it from youth level up through the ranks into the professional thing. But there is a player pathway program the NFL's put in place to try and get AFL, rugby league, and rugby union players to swap over and go into American football. When they do sign up for this player pathway, they've got to wait a year before they can actually play a game. So I think Christian Wade, the rugby player, is signed up to it, and he's on the smaller. He's only 5'8", so he's on the real small side. There are a lot of Australians who do play around. Obviously, we've seen Mark Schwarzer in the past as an Australian, Mark Bosnich as an Australian. Christian Wade, he's signed up for this NFL player pathway, but he has to wait a full year before he could actually start doing pre-season training camp and get on the pre-season squad, the training squad, and get onto a lineup. Same with Jordan Malitia, the rugby league player from Australia, who's got picked up in the draft by the Philadelphia Eagles. He also went through this player pathway program. Yes, there's a couple of British-born players in the NFL. There's actually quite a few of them. Some Australian players. There is a thing with. Oh God, my laptop in his dad's pocket. There we go. He's managing at Notts County now. Is Harry Kewell? He's at Notts County, so he's got a tough task ahead of him in the sense that they're third bottom in the Football League. He was at Crawley Town. Notts County obviously fired Kevin Nolan in the season, and they went for Harry Kewell. So kind of a Liverpool connection there, with Nolan being a Scouser, born and bred, and Harry Kewell playing for Liverpool for so long. Kind of a Liverpool connection with that managerial turnover. I'm surprised we haven't had any Premier League sackings. I think Djokanovic at Fulham is looking likely for the chop now. It's getting tight at the bottom of the table. I think Harry Kewell is very well spoken. He's got a good temperament, and I think this bodes well for the future of the game in Australia, having an Australian manager in a foreign league. He's got a tough job ahead of him with Notts County, but he did very, very well at Crawley. He did reasonably well, but then he played a couple of regular season games and then he was dropped. And I think that's down to the coach, not him. What's happened off the field with Jared Hayne in America is up for debate, with his private life and allegations made against him. He then goes back to Gold Coast and it doesn't work at Gold Coast. He's alleged the reason why the coach got sacked. He then gets moved on to Parramatta. He's signed below market value at Parramatta. They don't re-sign him for this year. So I've done a video on where does he end up? Where does he go? It'd be interesting to see where he does end up if he comes to Super League. Does he give rugby union a try? He's 30 now, so age is starting to count against Jared Hayne. His fitness has been questioned. Jared Hayne's an interesting one. He's again a divisive figure. So I remember when Notts County signed Sven and Sol Campbell, and Sol Campbell played a game and then refused to play for them ever again. Honestly, Notts County is an interesting club. It's one of the most historical clubs in football. It's one of the oldest clubs in football. I think it's the oldest club in football, if I'm not mistaken. Big rivalry with Nottingham Forest. Obviously, they're in different leagues now, and that's a heated rivalry that people forget about. It would be catastrophic if they were to go out of the Football League. As one of the founders of the Football League, to go out of the Football League would be catastrophic and wouldn't be a great look for English football. But again, it comes down to finances and a variety and governance and a variety of things. Jared Hayne, cast by 2020, he's not got a contract for 2019 yet, so it'll be interesting to see if a Super League team does pick him up. It'll be interesting to see if an NRL team picks him up. There's been discussion of him going to St George Illawarra. They may have the cap space for him at cap value, but would he? He's not the player he was in 2014 when he left the NRL. The game has evolved so much, and I think he's been left behind. His fitness is a massive concern, and his temperament off the field. It's not on the field. His temperament, it's his off-field temperament. It's clearly he was a divisive figure in the locker room at Gold Coast. He was divisive, obviously, in the locker room at Parramatta because they haven't re-signed him. And pre-season, this season just gone, he was well off that pace. He's always known to be a bit lazy in pre-season, but he looked terrible, really unfit, not on the same level as the rest of his Parramatta teammates in fitness. He was so far behind in fitness, and his time at Gold Coast, that's how it all went down at Gold Coast. He got the coach sacked. He did a bit of player power, but look at me, I'm a star player, and he got the coach sacked. He had a decent cup with. But it would be very bad for the image of football if one of the founding clubs of the Football League that actually came up with the rule book that we now use for 11-a-side football, if they were to go out, it would be a disaster. We've already seen it with Ashton Stanley going bust a couple of times and having to reform. It would not be a good image for the Football League trying to sell the game, and it does come down to governance and it does come down to finances. And when Harry Kewell obviously got announced as manager, it was a positive boost in the arm. And a couple of weeks ago, they had Notts County as one of the featured clubs on Football Focus here on BBC, and I think it was either Chubb Claremont or chairman or CEO or someone in the back room basically was part of the interview. We interviewed him pitch side, and he was like, "Yeah, there's no money in League One and League Two. Clubs are broke." And it's true. The promise that we were given when Sky Sports came about and Murdoch put the help get the Premier League going, and all that, the money was going to filter down. Ticket prices were going to be kept low. The game was going to improve at all levels, grassroots and top level. And that hasn't sort of happened, really. There's less English players playing the Premier League now than when it was first set up. Ticket prices have gone through the roof, and players' wages have gone through the roof and are unsustainable. And very few clubs actually make a post-tax profit outside the Premier League. The TV deal isn't weighted fairly. Championship, a lot of teams make a loss, massive losses. Only a handful of clubs in the Championship make a profit, and below that, you're looking at not a lot. Clubs rely on cup runs to make money, just to make ends meet. So many clubs are on the verge of administration; it's unreal. Something has to give, and the EFL have failed. The Football League clubs, the Premier League, and the FA are just failing clubs in general. And it's a ticking time bomb. When loads of clubs go out of business, it's going to happen. It is going to happen. The bubble has to burst soon, and it will catastrophically. Oh, look, because it's not sanctioned by any domestic governing body, and it's not sanctioned by UEFA, who's going to want to watch that? Who's going to have the money to travel around Europe? Unless you're super rich. So these clubs are the wealthy clubs that are protected by financial fair play. You notice the clubs that are having these secret meetings, allegedly, according to Spiegel, are the ones that the financial fair play protects from breaching financial fair play. The Spanish clubs involved, Real Madrid, Barcelona, have had government subsidies for years, which is against competition rules that the EU sets out, and they breach them regularly. Oh, their players don't pay their taxes properly, or their managers, and it's all greed. It's greed. I certainly wouldn't support it. I know a lot of football fans won't support it because rivalry is what makes sport what it is. You take some of these clubs out of their domestic leagues. You take Liverpool out of Merseyside Derby if you do this. And players want to play for their country. We've seen the club country debate, but for the most part, players want to play for their country. You say you're banned from playing for your country if you do this. And if you want to be readmitted, you have to go at the bottom rung of the ladder, which will be non-league in some cases, or the bottom professional tier. Yeah, I can see either the federations calling the club's bluff, or UEFA actually meaning what they're saying. But it's a badly kept secret. There's been rumours of having a European Super League for years, but who's going to want to watch that? Really, who's going to watch it? It's just going to be an elite competition with a limited amount of games where the clubs will not be allowed to play. Oh yeah, they were talking about it years ago. They've been talking about it for a long, long time. Since the Champions League was thought of, they've been debating whether to have a European Super League. But I don't see what fans would want to watch a European Super League. I can't. I honestly don't know how serious they are. Maybe they're calling UEFA's bluff because obviously UEFA want to bring in this new European competition at roughly the same time they want to have this European Super League started up. In about 2020, 2021, there's going to be another European trophy to play for. Whether it's Return to the Cup, Wins Cup, I don't know. The European Nations League is basically because a lot of people complained about pointless friendlies, and friendlies were a big contentious issue. They brought it in, but they've done a real greedy deal here. The FA, of all the home nations, the Welsh FA, the Northern Irish FA, the Irish FA itself, the Scottish FA and English FA have all basically gone, right, football's at the peak of its popularity for the first time in 2 decades, with England doing really well in the World Cup and recently Wales going really far in the Euros. We'll sell the rights to Sky. They've done a cricket with the international game, and they've sold the rights to Sky. And yeah, it's debatable whether it's actually as good as just having standard qualifying tournaments, qualifying groups for tournaments. It does get rid of those pointless friendlies, which have been a contentious point for years. It just means less football is accessible to less people. That's basically what it is. What's happened here is the game has been sold out to greedy people like Murdoch, and that's why the Super League debate keeps coming up. I think there's too much money in football now, and it's not reaching the grassroots levels like it should. Um, and, every time we talk about football, it's not in a positive light on this channel, really. Every time football gets discussed, it's not really a positive light. The World Cup videos that I did when I was reviewing the World Cup, um, Scotland England games, yes, I think the players would like it. I think the police wouldn't. If we look at previous Scotland England games and the severe crowd disorder we've seen, um, I think the media would love it. The police would hate England Scotland games on a regular basis in football. For some reason, I don't understand what it is. When England play Scotland at rugby league, rugby union, cricket, it's fine. You get England and Scotland playing at football, and fans get stabbed. This is where football's got a problem. It's got this tribal mentality that's medieval. It's got a massive issue, and I think violence in football's on the rise. I don't know. I do remember the two Griffiths free kicks. So I do. That was a good game, but now we can't watch that kind of game because the UEFA Nations League is not on free-to-air TV. So a lot of people are left without international football, which is one of the few things that a lot of football fans or casual fans would watch. They've gone off the club game because that seems unaccessible for ticket prices, TV rights. They want to watch the internationals. They can't watch that anymore. We did used to have the Home Nations Cup in football, but debatable whether it would work and whether UEFA would sanction it because of this new UEFA Nations League they're drumming through. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see how successful this UEFA Nations League is because they're also using it for the qualifying tournament for the next Euros. So we're going to see, see how this experiment with UEFA Nations League works going forward. Because we know the Euros is an expanding tournament, so more teams are going to play in that. We know that the World Cup is going to get expanded, so we shall see what happens long term with international football. But I don't like the fact that TV rights have been taken away from freedom of broadcasters. I really don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that. Club games, you can do what you want with the club game. The club game's going down the toilet anyway, but I don't know. Yes, we discussed the struggles that Scottish football has both in the domestic league and internationally, and there is an issue. For 20 years, you haven't qualified for a tournament. If Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, and Wales are qualifying or close to qualifying for tournaments, and Scotland aren't, that says there's a bigger issue than just a crap team. It's player development, it's coaching development, it's finances, it's grassroots, it's the structure of the game in Scotland. Well, there's rumours that FIFA might bring forward the expansion of the World Cup to the Qatar World Cup from 32 to 48 teams, but you're going to need more than one nation to do it. And Qatar politically is isolated in the Middle East. Its neighbouring countries are not fans of Qatar. So I don't know. Yes, they're going to host the next World Cup. I don't know what format the World Cup will be in and what's going to happen there. FIFA have hinted at possibly expand the tournament to more teams 4 years earlier. That they originally planned to do that for the US, Mexico, Canadian World Cup, but I don't know. The fact is going to be, even if they play it in winter, it's still going to be bloody hot in the middle of a pissing desert, unless they play all the games at night. I don't know. I don't even know. This is how corrupt football's got. That Qatar's got a World Cup. It's a country of 500,000 people. It's a country in the middle of a pissing desert. I don't know why they've decided to go there, but they have. Yeah, I think another European World Cup would be really, really good. It'd be nice to have a World Cup in England or Great Britain, and there is plans for a British bid for either a Euros or a World Cup soon. Italy has some issues, however, infrastructure-wise. Some of the stadiums that they built for Italia 90 are now, well, 30 years old, like the San Siro. It's 30 years old in a couple of years. So some of the stadium infrastructure needs seriously updating in Italy on a lot of stadiums, and Italy does not have a lot of public funds to pump into building and the domestic game. There's financial issues in Italian football that would go against it. It would be nice to see another European World Cup, but there's a whole load of reasons why FIFA don't want to do that. They want to go to the emerging markets and then milk the gravy train as much as possible. A lot of stadiums need a makeover. A lot of stadiums are really in a bad state of repair that wouldn't be up to FIFA international standard. They do have some nice stadiums. Some of them are really creaking in age. San Siro's 30 years old now. Napoli Stadium's getting on now as well. The Stadio Olimpico has been refurbed, but it's now a multi-purpose use stadium with rugby union as well. So it's an interesting one. They do have the stadiums. It's getting them up to repairing them and refurbing them, and because the World Cup's going to be expanded in tournament size, Italy would have to host with Austria or France, or Switzerland. I'm surprised they haven't decided to look at Australia and New Zealand, because that really surprised me. It's the only World Cup that hasn't been hosted by the Antipodean countries, as I call them, Australia and New Zealand. Australia's obviously recently hosted the Rugby League World Cup with assistance from Papua New Guinea and New Zealand. Brilliant tournament. Could have been better, but brilliant tournament. It's recently had the Commonwealth Games. It's had the Olympics. It's had the Cricket World Cup. It's had the Rugby Union World Cup. New Zealand's had the Rugby Union World Cup as well, twice. So I am really surprised that Australia and New Zealand haven't gone through with putting in a bid for the World Cup at some point, but it is the finance side. It is, New Zealand's a very small country population-wise. Does New Zealand have the infrastructure for accommodating all the people visiting? Australia, I think the size of Australia, this is what America's going to find out with Canada and Mexico, is the time zone difference and the climatic differences between different bits, because Perth is could be having a heat wave, whereas Sydney and Brisbane could be getting pissed on by tropical storms. Darwin, could have a cyclone come in, whereas Adelaide could have frost at night. It's the climatic extremes in Australia and New Zealand, because New Zealand is Auckland subtropical, South Island is alpine in climate. So the climatic changes across Australia and New Zealand are massive. So that's going to be an interesting one. I think Italy will make the next World Cup because it's an expanded tournament. If they want to expand the tournament in Qatar, then there'll be more teams playing. Italy are doing decently at the moment. Alice Springs, that's an interesting one. Let's put a game in the middle of the desert. Oh wait, no, FIFA will do it with Qatar. So yeah, I can see Alice Springs probably hosting a game. The issues with an Australian Football World Cup as such is rugby league and rugby union and cricket are more popular. So you're going to fill the stadiums with those sports. We saw that in the Rugby Union World Cup and the Rugby League World Cups in the last 20 years. We've seen fill the stadiums in those tournaments. Would football fill the stadiums? Would there be enough fans of the native Australian market plus the foreign fans coming in to fill the stadiums? And does Australia have enough stadiums as well? Are there enough locations to host games? I know Sydney's got a lot of stadiums, but a lot of them are on the smaller side for rugby league. You've got ANZ and Allianz; they're being refurbed. Perth is Perth. Does Adelaide have a football stadium that's big enough? Tasmania. I mean, why is Tasmania not looked at? Yeah, but is football a big enough sport in Australia? That's the thing. I am surprised they haven't considered a bid, but again, it's the money. It's the infrastructure. Oh yeah, no, we saw that in the Rugby League World Cup. Papua New Guinea, when they played at home in Port Moresby, sides were battered because of the heat. But when they were forced to play their quarterfinal against England outside, they wilted because they didn't have the conditions favouring them. It is an interesting one. I think because Australia is such a country of massive climatic extremes, that would be interesting to look at going forward. The US bid, the football World Cup's been there before, and the climatic extremes aren't so bad. We do have desert, but you know, it's a big continent, yes, but the climatic extremes aren't as much. But I am interested in Australia and New Zealand having tried to, come up with a joint bid. But maybe they will in the future. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's partly to do with the infrastructure and the stadium sizes and can some parts of Australia and New Zealand accommodate that influx of fans as well? That'll be the interesting thing, because Australia and New Zealand's populations are a lot smaller than let's say Brazil, where they've had the World Cup recently. So we we'll have to have a see. And yes, it is the only continent without a World Cup to its name in football. So yeah, that is interesting. Even Africa's had a World Cup now. The Qatar one is that's something I think FIFA would rather we didn't talk about. But it is what it is. But yeah, Scotland losing constantly has been a thing since '98. I do remember Scotland's last game at a World Cup in 1998 because I watched it. Scot- Scotland have been left behind by the other home nations and other European nations when it comes to developing footballing talent. If we're seeing teams like Slovakia and Slovenia qualify more commonly for tournaments than Scotland, that says there's a problem. If we're seeing countries like Croatia, which have a similar size of population to Scotland, develop class players year on year and get far in tournaments, that says Scotland has a problem. The Croatian league isn't a competitive league either, since the breakup of the former Yugoslavia, but Croatia can do it. There's a lot of issues with Scotland. There is a lot of issues within the Scottish game, Scottish society as well. We'll see what happens. Yeah, they did have quite a decent team back in the day, but again, living in the past is not going to help Scotland. They've got to look for the future and look why they're having these problems now, and why the game isn't as good as it could be, and why the domestic league isn't as competitive as it should be, and try and fix the issues before trying to qualify for tournaments. And it's a long fix, but the Scottish FA needs completely restructuring. That I have no doubt. The Scottish League needs restructuring, and no one's willing to put the time or effort in to do that restructuring. They're happy to leave it as it is because they don't want to do the hard work. You don't get anywhere without hard work, and the Scottish Federation and the league, they don't want to put the hard work in to fix the problems that they've allowed to fester for 20, 25 years. Yeah, 2006. Yeah. I wouldn't say dived. I'd say it was a soft penalty. We'll go for soft penalty to avoid controversy. But I watched that game. Yeah, Australia have some decent players, and they develop some decent players. But time will tell if they do get a World Cup, because now Australia play in the Asian Confederation, whereas New Zealand play in the Oceanian Confederation. So they play in two different confederations. For them to have a joint bid would be very, very interesting as well. Tyson Wilder, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. It's going to be interesting. It is going to be interesting what happens. I'm not predicting a winner. Boxing is a sport that has issues, but I would say yes, it will be a good fight because they're both champions. Obviously, Fury's had his personal issues and has been. Even though I don't like Tyson Fury, the fact he's been willing to admit to his mental health issues and what he said on mental health is very positive. And Deontay Wilder has been ignorant, I suppose, but I think that's going to fire up Fury a little bit. It is going to be interesting. It's not going to be easy for either side, either boxer. It's going to be brutal, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went to points or a straight knockout if one of them just gives up the ghost and is knocked out. But we'll see what happens when the fight actually takes place. But again, this box office style of how boxing makes its money. A lot of people seem to want to get it for free. Let's see. Australia is a sports mad nation. It's not a multi-sport. It is a sports. It's part of the Australian culture is to be athletic and to be sporty. Um, that's why Australia doesn't have an obesity crisis like Western Europe, because it is a sports mad nation. To it's a big part of Australian society, um, and I think it would help the A League grow if they did get a World Cup. I really do. Yes, Tyson Fury does have a chance to beat Devontae Wilder, and vice versa. It's all down to what happens on the night, really, and how both fighters prepare and how they approach each other and how they tactically do it as well. Um, but no, Tyson Fury's a big man. He's a powerful man. Devontae Wilder, again, big man, powerful man. It's going to come down to what happens on the night and how they prepare and who's the fittest. I honestly think it could go the distance or it could go to knockout, and it could be a brutal fight where it's literally both fighters are cut open, bleeding, really slugging it out like proper heavyweight should. But while I don't like Tyson Fury for some of his views on homosexuality, women, religion, when it comes to mental health and his openness about it, and the fact that he's willing to support others with mental health and do get involved in the charity work and getting the message out there about it, I have some respect for him for that. I may not like it, but I have some respect for him for that. And yes, Devontae Wilder's comments are a bit uneducated and not. Uh, so I am warming to him slightly as well. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of all this pay per view style just to make the funds up the prize purse. Um, but it's how it's gone. Not enough boxing's on free to air anymore. It's all on this pay per view, pay per view, pay per view. Even when you've got a subscription service, you've got to have the pay per view. But I've paid for the Sky Sports package. Why have I got to pay more when I've got it's clue? That's the argument I have. That is why I don't. Um, uh, this is why I'm not a big fan of uh, subscription and pay per view sports. I think it's unfair for the average sporting fan because not everyone has the financial ability to pay for this. And if you want to watch it, just go down the pub. It's basically what a lot of people are going to do. If it's the right timing of day, people will go down pubs to watch it. Um, but it will come down to a variety of factors: the build up, the training. If one of them catches a bit of a flu virus or a cold, that can hold them back for a week or so. So it comes down to a variety of factors. But I don't put too much stock in boxing anymore. I've gone off boxing a hell of a lot over the years. Uh, there are sports that I enjoy a hell of a lot more. And I've done my list of favourite sports video in the summer. There are some sports that I enjoy far much more, that I feel more engaged with, that I feel more accessible for people, um, more fun to watch. Because if you've got to pay for it, it could be done in the first round, and then you paid X amount of money for a fight that's lasted a minute. That's the issue with boxing. It's the issue with the pay per view thing. It'd be interesting to see who's on the undercard for that fight as well, because I bet you the undercard could be quite interesting. Well, actually, now Mayweather's come out and said he hasn't agreed to the fight with the kickboxer, but I think if he was to fight that kickboxer, he's going to get his, going to get his head kicked in. Yes, if you've got a late license, you can show it. If you've got Sky or BT, you can show it. It's going to be interesting to see how the media and how it's shown. There's been a couple of them where they've taken place in the middle of the night, where people have actually had to stay up late to watch. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens. But this is the issue with subscription sports. People just go to the pub to watch. They don't pay for the subscription at home. That's why pubs are always filled with football and rugby matches, because the sports are done in the pub and you have to pay for it. You just pay for a pint. So there's a flaw in the subscription sports system. That's his cousin, isn't it? It is going to be interesting. We'll have to see what the undercard's like. The undercard could be more exciting than the actual main event. I But going back to Mayweather, yeah, no, he's made it. It's a farce with Mayweather at the moment, really. It's been announced he's going to fight this Japanese kickboxer. Then he comes out and says, "No, I haven't agreed anything," because he knows he's going to get his ass kicked if he does fight this guy. Um, there's alleges, that Habib might have a crack at him. He might have a rematch with McGregor. Mayweather's just you know, he's not. I wouldn't say Mayweather's even the best boxer in the world of all time. He hugs his opponents to death. He's a grappler. Um, he's been put on his ass a few times by boxers in his career. Um, the fact he's unbeaten is because he wins most of his fights by points decision. He doesn't knock out many of his opponents. So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, but no, the kickboxer, he will obviously kickboxing. You have a boxing ability as well. You have to use your punches. Very good tight game. Very good jabbing game. Um, and I think Mayweather might have bit off more than he can chew here. But we'll see what happens if the fight goes ahead. He's trying to downplay the fact whatever's been agreed. But again, I've never liked Floyd Mayweather. He's an asshole, but here's what it is. Yeah, Sugar Ray Robinson. I mean, I remember Holyfield and Tyson and Lennox Lewis and Prince Nassim. That's a boxer that I remember a lot about as a kid growing up. Um, Prince Nassim is an interesting boxer. Um, I think his ego got the better of him, and he was difficult to um, a difficult character to work with. A lot of reports have come out and a lot of stories come out about how difficult Prince Nassim was to work with as an athlete in training and when he got to the press conferences, he was apparently very, very difficult to work alongside from his training camp. He was a pain in the arse. But you don't really get the characters like that as much in boxing these days. You get very, very, very characters and mavericks these days. There's a few out there, but there's not as many, and I think it's a lesser sport without that kind of maverick kind of athlete. Um, so we'll see what happens with Wilder and Fury. It's going to be interesting. The undercard is going to be interesting, but again, it's pay per view, and I refuse to pay the money. Yeah, Eubank and Ben, they were part of my youth as well. Again, can't access it anymore because it's not on terrestrial TV anymore. But no, Eubank and Ben, they were very, very, very. That was a feud and a half. That was. It's a shame that there's less boxing on free to air TV now. But it's the way sports going. They're sports at a crossroads. Professional sports is at a crossroads with the TV deals that are signed. We're seeing a sort of trend to go back towards free to air with some sports. They're sort of drip feeding little bits and pieces, partly because BT Sport is struggling so badly, and Sky Sports and Sky itself has just been sold to Comcast, so that's going to be restructured. So we're seeing little drips coming back, and I think the fan base of sports fans in this country and around the world are demanding it more now. They're turning off subscription TV because, especially when it comes to sports TV, because the amount of streaming online, the amount of VPNs. I found websites where I can watch the matches a day or two late, but I can find them, and I don't have to pay. And a lot of the sports leagues are realizing the internet is a tool that can be used positively, and some sports leagues are. If you look at the World Rugby YouTube channel, they do show a lot of the sevens tournaments, the lower level nations on the World Rugby. So they'll see the second and third tier nations playing games, and they get those games on the YouTube channel live stream. They do that very, very well. So some sports and some sports federations are working out that we're not happy with the TV deals as fans. We don't want to pay anymore. We've paid enough, and in real terms, wages aren't going up as much as they used to. So we're at a point now where financially people are less well off in real terms. And if these sports companies keep pushing this pay per view and subscriptions structure, they're going to turn their backs. That could have been sevens. It could have been a variety. I'm trying to work out what you were seeing Fiji on ITV. Might have been a highlights package, but no, there's definitely more rugby union on free to air TV because Channel 5 have got some domestic games now. Channel 4 gets some internationals, including the Island internationals. and the BBC. So there's 3 channels that now show professional. Well, 4 channels if you count ITV as well. There's now 4 channels that are showing professional rugby union. So all 4 terrestrial BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5 networks are all showing rugby union now. So that's a good step in the right direction. I think rugby union have got that one right. Well, rugby have basically said we might want to look at trying to be a bit more accessible here. With the World Cup next year, they're trying to make the sport more accessible before putting all rights back on pay-per-view. Rugby league, we've got 3 internationals from this test series from free to air, which is a godsend. The next Olympic Games are in, is it Tokyo? Is it Tokyo or is it Beijing? Shit. I know Beijing has got the next Winter Olympics. I'm going to have to double check. I think it's Tokyo. We'll double check that. I believe it's Tokyo. I could be wrong. Double check. Next Olympic Games next, because the Winter Olympics is in Beijing next. Yes, it is Tokyo. So it's going to be Tokyo, and then Beijing gets the next Winter Olympics in 2022. So it's 3 consecutive Olympic Games in Asia, and Beijing obviously had the 2008 Summer Olympics. So that's 5 Olympic Games in a little over 12 years or 14 years in Asia. So that's really interesting, and it's good to see. Well, there's issues with some of the stadium builds, which have gone concurrently with the rugby union because they've got both these major sports events, both the Rugby Union World Cup next year and the Olympics the year after. There's been some concerns that not all the stadiums are going to be ready, not all the infrastructure is going to be ready, which is surprising considering that Japan hosted the World Cup in 2002 and some of the stadiums are state of the art. But obviously, we've got the Rugby Union World Cup in a year's time and the Olympics the year after that. They were trying to, I think, take on too much at the same time, considering that Japan, bearing in mind, has had a lot of natural disasters of that tsunami, the Fukushima power plant meltdown, a lot of earthquakes on a yearly basis. That does disrupt building work. And obviously the stadiums have to be earthquake proof, which means they're more expensive and they take longer to build. There have been concerns about the venues not being fully ready yet. Oh, it's Japan. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be like really weird, crazy. Yes. I am looking forward to next year's Rugby Union World Cup. Obviously, the time difference is going to be a pain in the ass for watching it, but I'm looking forward to it, yes. Again, the Olympics I'm looking forward to as well. I really am. Again, Japan, very much like Australia, very sports mad nation. People don't realise how sports mad the Japanese are, but they really are really into their sport in Japan. And again, really sporty nation. It's part of their culture to be actively involved in sport. It's actively encouraged. And look at the lack of obese people in Japan. Japan, a very healthy nation as well. Australia and Japan do not have an obesity crisis like the UK and America, because instead of just being sports fans that watch sport, they also are actively involved in sport, and it's considered very, very, it's sort of a social thing. Yes and no. I think the difference between Japan and Argentina is Japan has a professional league below Super Rugby that has been fully professional since 1995. Argentina's still got this amateur game, but Argentina has a good link with the European leagues, with players going over there. It's an interesting one with international selection with the Jaguares all playing for the national side. It's an interesting one. I'm not sure if, well, the way Super Rugby is going at the moment, it's favouring the New Zealand sides in the sense that there's 5 New Zealand teams, which means they have more player depth when it comes to international level, which is why the All Blacks are so good, whereas Australia and South Africa have sort of been hindered. Plus, there is a distrust between the South African Federation and the New Zealand Federation because the Kiwis, the All Blacks, didn't want the South African teams to join the Super Rugby when it was initially formed back in 1995 because of the legacy of apartheid. Even though South Africa won the right to host that World Cup. There's a legacy of distrust between the South Africans and the New Zealanders, and the Australians aren't happy that the Western Force got forced out. The South Africans used their noggins and decided to talk to the Pro League, the old Celtic League, which also has two Italian clubs, of course, to move two of their teams, which are the two worst teams in the South African professional game, into the Pro League, and they're not doing so well, but they decided to keep those two professional franchises going. The Super Rugby needs to be restructured because it's an odd-numbered league at the moment. I think they had it right when they allowed the Japanese and Argentinian teams to join. They should have kept it at 18. They decided to do what the Sunwolves are a mixture of Japanese and non-Japanese players, but the Japanese domestic league is very, very, very well supported. There's a lot of Japanese players playing in it. Good crowds for what you expect for that sport. And a lot of people are investing in rugby, and I think it's a long-term thing. This World Cup has been on the cards for a long time. There's the money. It's Asian money. But Japanese players have played outside of Japan in other Super Rugby franchises as well. It won't be long before Japanese players start playing in Europe. It won't be, and this World Cup could be a catalyst for that. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll honestly have to see what happens the World Cup next year and how successful it is, because we're not going to have the summer tests in June and July because of the World Cup. It's going to be interesting to see how in the off season for the Northern Hemisphere leagues, what happens, and it's going to be interesting with the Super Rugby, what happens in June, July with the league structure there when players have to be released for pre-tournament camp. But no, Japan is an interesting subject, and what they did in the last World Cup, and they narrowly missed out on the knockout stages. It was unfortunate. They played very, very well. It's going to be interesting to see how they do this World Cup as they're hosting. Only one nation's failed as a host nation to get out of the group stage, and that was England 3 years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how Japan do. It's going to be a fantastic tournament, real fantastic tournament. But there are issues within rugby right now to do with some of the law variations on the tackle area and the head and neck, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can get those law variations set in stone, and also the supplementary discipline, because Cipriani's red card against Munster when he was playing for Gloucester wasn't a red card for me. It wasn't even a penalty for me. The guy fell into him. He wasn't attempting to make a tackle. He was standing his ground, which he's entitled to do because he's not offside. So a bit of common sense refereeing needs to take over, but unfortunately they're not doing that at the moment. But we'll have to see. But it's looking like going to be a good tournament. Absolutely. The tournament's looking like it's going to be good, but it all depends on if they can get all the stadiums ready in time and they can get the tickets sold and they promote it right. And TV's going to be interesting because it's taking place in the middle of the time difference of nearly 12 hours is going to be interesting when games take place. We saw that with the New Zealand World Cup as well, with games take place at weird times of day for the European market. But we'll see what happens. The World Cup is looking good though. I do video game reviews on my other channel, but I don't live stream. I don't want to risk copyright violations. I've had one copyright violation so far on my first ever live stream because I had some music playing. So I'm trying to avoid that because I want to get monetized and then we can take it from there. I don't live stream. I don't even have a webcam attached to my Xbox, so I can't, which is a pain in the arse. But at the end of the day, when I video game, it's more me playing. I don't really like talking through my video games, I suppose. I'm a weird one for that. I find that's my hobby. That's my place. I do video game reviews. I've done a couple on the other channel, but I don't live stream them because I find that distracting when I'm playing as well, and I'll cock up something and I'll make an arse out of myself. So when I game, I tend to focus really hard and get really into it and don't do a lot of talking. But I do the video game reviews on the other channel, so check them out. I've done a review on Red Dead. I've done a review on Assassin's Creed. I've done a couple of film reviews, so feel free to check them out on the other channel. Right, I've been going for nearly 2 hours. I think I'm going to call that a wrap for now. Appreciate all you guys, asking the questions and stuff. It's been really interesting. Apologies again for the trolls. We seem to get them a lot. Hence why you guys are all moderators, because I've had enough of trolls ruining live streams for people, and just being generally morons. We seem to get them more and more often, which is really annoying. But I appreciate you guys asking the questions. Good to see some of you I haven't seen for a while. Some good discussions there. Some good points. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. I'll have some more videos up next day and tomorrow as well. So keep your eye out for them. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll catch you guys when I catch you guys. And I appreciate all the questions and the discussion we've had. So I'll catch you guys later. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.